Hello and welcome to Recall Episode 2, or as the four people in this show are going to call it, Episode 2.5. Today on the show we have coL.Lautemortis. You've all moved into your gaming house now. You've been there for just over a week. How are you finding living in LA?
Howdy. I don't know. The first week in LA, we got really sick because of all the pollution or whatnot. But we're all settled in and practicing, and I don't know, having a good time. It's been a really fun experience thus far, and we're
Oh,
looking to transition our game into a better territory in this week's LCS.
also joining us on this week's show after last week's audio issues that we had, Dignitas Crumbz. How is your temporary stay in LA treating you?
Well, in LA, although surprisingly, it's actually colder than in Vancouver. So that's weird because I didn't really bring many winter clothes. So I'm kind of cold a lot of the time. But I'm staying here at the Complexity House, and it's really nice. It's like they are really great people, and I'm really enjoying my stay here. And until we find the place, I'll just be staying here for a while.
And as always, I'm joined by my lovely co-host KatanaMordecai. How are you today?
Hi, doing well. Good, glad to be here again, and hope it goes as well as it did last time, even though no one saw it.
Yeah, as I alluded to at the beginning of the show, we actually had an audio issue, which meant that our full show last week couldn't go up on YouTube. But nevertheless, we are here this week, and we're actually streaming live just to make sure that everything goes well. So one of the big things, that we discussed talking about on Recall is LCS. So last week, LCS started with North America, so we figured that would be a good place to start. So Katana, I know... obviously being in North America, and we have North American players joining us today, I think that seems like the best place to start.
Yep. I think the best way to do this will just be to go team by team. So we can start off by talking about TSM. A lot of people I know going into the first week were saying TSM hasn't been practicing, they haven't been looking good at all, and a lot of people were expecting them to not do very well. And they ended up going 2-1. They lost to CLG, but won against Vulcan and Dignitas. And so what did you guys think about those matches from TSM?
I think they came out stronger than I expected for sure. We had scrimmed them the week before, and they didn't seem as strong. But after scrimming them this week and watching their LCS matches, they definitely seem to have gotten quite a bit better, or at least caught up to where they should have been.
I think, yeah, as you said, they looked a lot better than a lot of people expected, but I thought on their first day, they looked a little bit shaky in their games against CLG, and then they looked a completely different team in the second day, in my opinion.
Yeah, Crumbz, what did you think about TSM?
I actually didn't get
Crumbz is enjoying some almonds.
see much of their first game against CLG because I was late to the actual place because I had a lot of issues with the shuttle there and then getting there. So I only saw about the ending. So after that, though, I feel like a lot of the teams, just including us, underestimated them. And that combined with how we played against them, I can't speak for Vulcan that played against them, but ourselves, we had a lot of technical problems, and they're good, pretty much. They're back to where they should be. And I think this week, though, only 1 week is not enough to say that they're actually at that level consistently. Maybe 2 or 3 weeks from now, if they manage to keep up at that same level, you can safely say that, all right, TSM is still on top of the game. But for now, they're just a team that, they still have the ability to be a good team.
Yeah. I guess we can segue into CLG, which was the first game that TSM played against. CLG went 2-1, and they looked pretty strong. They beat TSM and GGU, and they lost to Curse, which I think is roughly what a lot of people were expecting. That's at least what I was predicting going into this week. So, Stress, what did you think about those games?
Yeah, I thought the games were pretty much exactly how everybody thought they were going to be. That game against Curse was pretty much a repeat of the NESL games that they showed that were played the week before, and I thought it was really strange. Obviously, I know Riot are wanting to build up their event as like the biggest event, so they don't particularly want to mention too many other results, but a lot of the video packages talked about how close it was going to be, how the teams haven't played each other in a while, and those of us that watched NESL kind of knew what was going to happen in those games. I mean, again, Riot don't particularly want to mention things and make it so there's less of a story, but like CLG looked decent as always. Like they've never looked particularly poor. But I think they looked certainly top 3 in NA this week.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think the NESL games are a basis to judge that because CLG didn't have an actual mid lane player for that. They were using a sub. 2 different subs in both those games. So that's why I personally didn't think that the NACL games really mattered too much. But I guess it pretty much was a repeat of that, like a complete stomp.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting how well practiced they were when they came out against TSM. Their level 1 was like perfectly orchestrated. They threw down like 3 or 4 wards level 1 and took the blue buff with Syndra. And I think that just is a testament to CLG's practice and their diligence to performing new strategies. And I think that every week they're going to come in with something interesting and unique that you're going to have to game plan for. They're not coming in looking to play standard. They're coming in like looking to put teams on their toes and putting them in new situations. And I think that that's one of the things that's always made CLG one of the best teams in North America.
That blue pool was really fun to watch.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's nice to see that players are coming up with little new tricks, especially at level 1, because it can affect the game quite a lot. Like with the Syndra taking the blue, that was a nice play and funny for viewers to watch as well. And then like Dragonborns have been doing that, taking most of their jungle creeps at level 1. So I mean, it kind of changes how the game plays out, and it's nice to see that teams are actually looking at it more than just the laning phase and then into team fights.
Definitely. I guess looking at the Dignitas games, Dignitas went 1-2 this week. They lost to Curse and TSM and won against Vulcan. As far as my predictions for the week, I was hoping to see a win over TSM, and I was expecting to see a win over Vulcan, and then Curse. The Curse game was kind of a toss-up for me. What were you guys thinking looking into this past week?
I mean, I'll be honest, I don't know, it's me being biased during a Dignitas City, but especially through the hype, I knew Curse was going to be a close game. I still think it was a close game. There's a lot of people saying that perhaps we didn't look as good as we claimed we did, but I think when you really look at that Curse game, there were a lot of points where that was a very back and forth game that could have gone either way. TSM game, maybe not quite as confident as we were against Curse, but yeah, and the Vulcan game was we looked strong, and then at points there was maybe a bad decision. I can't remember exactly what happened in that Vulcan game, but we started letting them get back into it a little bit, but ultimately it was it wasn't quite so close in the end. But I think overall we did okay. I know Crumbz and I spoke to Skara afterwards. They weren't particularly happy with how we played, but I think looking at that Curse game in particular, I definitely don't think that we're quite as deserving as the rankings that we were given on the power rankings that GG Chronicle did.
Well, I don't really care too much about the power rankings about GG Chronicle. And speaking of those games, well, first game, I remember that we had a shuttle scheduled to pick me up to drive me to the Riot thing, and then they had the wrong address and my wrong phone number. So then I waited there for a while, didn't get there, then had to go get a ride, and then the GPS failed, and then we had to call people to give us the directions, and then when we got there, we got to the wrong place. So it was a really big mess. By the time I got there, the TSM game was pretty much done. I had maybe like 10 minutes to set up, no actual warm up or anything, and then out of that, I just decided to play Lee Sin, like one of the toughest champions, without actually any warm up whatsoever. And then that failed, and we kind of stuttered a little bit in the ban, picked some ban space in which we did not want to play Elise. We wanted to ban it for sure, but for some reason we did not, and we picked it because we actually have never played a game with Elise. As a team, for like 4 months, we've never played a single game with Elise, and we decided that this would be the time to play Elise. So it's a lot of mistakes there. And even then, though, that game could have been easily won by us. I feel like we had a fight at Baron in which we could have won, and some miscommunication has happened. It's really big ones, like abilities that we thought were up were not, and then we lost that fight pretty badly, and then that was the beginning of the game for that. But at least, I mean, we gave up a fight, and we're pretty sure that we learned a lot, first of all, from those games, so I don't think the mistakes are going to happen again. But that game was really close, and I think we're at that level, though. Even if we just correct our mistakes a little bit more, should be able to cruise through the win there. And the same goes for the TSM game. Just pretty much like one or two mistakes here and there, that miscommunication, and then we lose the game. And Vulcan game was simply, I mean, we've played Vulcan as our main scrim partner. We've played them maybe like 20 times in the past months, and we haven't lost a single game against them. So I think we were really confident going into this. Like, all right, let's just scrim these guys pretty much. It's just going to be streamed.
Yeah, and I mean, it definitely looked like there was much more confidence against Vulcan. I mean, when I spoke to Skara, you guys were saying about how in the first game you got, maybe with the Elise pick, you weren't quite confident in that, you'd not played it, and I think there was something a little bit similar to that in game number 2. But game number 3, you guys kind of just went straight in, knew exactly what you wanted, did exactly what you wanted to do in the game.
There's a lack of confidence in the picks in the first 2 games, and then how can you have a confident match when you start on the root of the game, which is the picks and bans, is already crooked? You can't really expect to play the game in a confident manner.
What did you think of this?
I definitely thought going in that, Crumbz, can you mute your mic? I thought going in that Dignitas was probably the best team in North America, or the team to beat. And I was kind of disappointed when they went 1-2, but I mean, I think it's pretty correctable, the mistakes they made. And I think as a positive note from it, I think Kiwi Kid played really well top, and I know he hasn't been to a lot of LANs in a professional setting, so I think that was a pretty positive outlook for them. I know he didn't do great against TSM when he played Kale because he got ganked or something, but overall, I think he played really well, and I think it's a positive note going forward for them. I met Kiwi for the first time in real life, and he seemed like a really nice guy, and so I'm happy that he did well, and I'm looking for Dignitas to bounce back this coming week.
Yeah, I definitely agree on the Kiwi Kid points. I mean, like, you look at the game against Curse, and like Voidboy is regarded by just about everybody in the scene as the top laner in NA. I don't think there's many people that would particularly argue that. And at points Kiwi was even ahead in that lane, which I know laning phase isn't
argue that.
But you'd argue that? You're in jungle now, Crumbz. You can't be best at every
I'll
lane.
argue that.
Okay, that's an interesting point. Who would you say is top laner in NA right now?
There's none. They're all pretty much at the same level.
I guess
they're like every single match at the LCS, there wasn't an actual top laner that actually killed the enemy top laner by themselves. It was always like a jungle gank in the lanes pretty much even the entire time. I guess the one you could count would be Hotshot playing Malphite without runes against Elite. But all these top laners are really close level, and there's not like these players that are regarded as such strong players. Really have a strong fan base, a really popular fan base that grows more and more from streaming and just playing games that are streamed in solo queue, and that really does not mean absolutely anything in an actual 5-on-5 environment like the one we have at LCS. So all these claims I really think are just far-fetched, and there isn't really one person that you can say, this is the guy that I want, because all these top laners, they don't even have a same champion pool. Every single top laner plays different champions because it's such a versatile lane. So they're really uncomparable.
Fair enough. And I mean, I felt bad for Kiwi Kid because he pretty much made that sort of statement of, I don't particularly think anybody in the top lane in NA is that good. And they mentioned that right before the game against TSM when, Arduin spent a fair amount of time top and then Kiwi Kid scaled. It's kind of... It was a little bit rickety under that pressure. I felt really bad for him, like, by the fact that everybody thought he was quite arrogant going in, and I know that's not quite how Kiwi is. So, yeah.
Yeah, it was nice to be able to see him in some more games, because I know that he hasn't been with Dignitas that long, and we haven't been able to watch him play that many times. So I definitely think he had a strong performance. I guess we can move on to talking about Curse. They went 3-0 this week, and while that wasn't that surprising, I mean, they were some tough games for them looking into predictions and things when, at least when I was looking at it. But they ended up winning all of their games and just looked really, really strong. What did you think about those stress?
Yeah, I mean, I was kind of expecting that. I know a lot of the fans maybe before the last 2 weeks have kind of given Curse a lot of flack, but they've been improving for quite a while now, and they will give everybody a close game even if they don't end up winning it. And I mean, I can't speak for what you guys do in scrims against them, but it seems like they're fairly consistent now at staying close to what are considered the previous top teams.
Yeah. And Crumbz, you obviously played a game against them. How did you feel about that match?
Well, the match against Curse, even though we were a little shaky, it looked to be pretty standard match for us. It was going quite well, and in the end we lost against because of the miscommunication. But Curse one got 3 wins, and you can't take that away from them. But these 3 wins weren't, with the exception of the CLG game, they weren't wins that you could say, oh, they won in that convincing fashion. Like, all right, definitely they won. They're clearly a stronger team, and they made less mistakes than the other. Like, our game and the game against GGU were neck and neck, and both GGU and us were ahead at a certain point in the game. So I really do think that right now, of course, with their record, they are considered the top team in LCS, but I think they could easily drop a game to any of these teams at any given point, just because of how close these games were. And that same thing applies to pretty much every team here.
Yeah, and Lot, what were you thinking about Curse?
They looked a lot stronger than well, everyone thought they were going to go in strong, but to go 3-0 and against Dignitas, CLG, and GGU. I mean, those are, top 5 or 6 teams, all 3 of them. And so to go 3-0 against that is a big testament to, how good they are. They may not be significantly more skilled than any other team, but to go 3-0 in all 3 of your games, I definitely think that they're the front runner in North America right now, and they're who we play this week in the LCS, and we've been watching them pretty closely. And I agree with Crumbz that they're definitely beatable, and there isn't a huge gap between North American teams. But if I had to classify one as the top right now, I would say it was Curse after their first week in the LCS.
Yeah, and that's the thing that I think everybody's got to remember. It is week 1, so there's still 25 games for most teams to play. Some have got 26, so some of the teams that maybe like TSM, who people thought weren't going into this quite as strong, still have a long time. I mean, even though every game is very important, I don't think it's quite a foregone conclusion that people can say, oh, Curse are going to win this now. So I think Curse will stay definitely, and I would have predict top 3, but I think it's too early to say that at the end, when everything's said and done, they'll be first.
Yeah, I can't say I was expecting them to not drop any of those games, because they were 3 pretty good games. I kind of figured that at least one of them wouldn't go their way, but despite them going 3-0, there were actually 2 teams that went 0-2 this week. There was GGU and Vulcan. So how are you guys feeling about GGU?
GGU had close games, both of them, but which is good for them. They're trying to get their housing situation figured out, and they're all going to school, and they have other priorities right now, which is unfortunate for them because they played so close. But I know this week they've had roster changes, and so I don't know going forward how strong they're going to be with the new lineup and whatnot. I know Shifter isn't playing mid for them this week, and they have a new support player. They picked up Bloodwater. And so, going forward, they look like a completely different team, They're switching to 2 members at the minimum in a week's time. So it'll be interesting to see how they do this week. But, last week they definitely showed promise for being basically an amateur team in the LCS. They did pretty decently.
Yeah, they also played against CLG and Curse, which obviously were pretty hard matchups, and they've got a game against Vulcan this week, and so we can see maybe if they have a little bit easier of a time with things like that. But Crumbz, what were you thinking about GGU?
Well, most of their games seem to rely on their AD carry on Don't Mash Me. And even though against their game in CLG, well, Don't Mash Me and Shifter managed to go pretty much legendary that game. And that just shows that for them, kills isn't the only thing. So they may have the ability to just capitalize and kill the enemy and outplay them mechanically, but it seems like they're still lacking that sort of team mechanic and team idea of how to play the game and push for objectives other than kills. And by objectives, I mean pretty much just how to win, finish the game. And that's just another thing that these more veteran teams like CLG has an advantage over these teams, especially since GG, their roster is quite fairly new. It's a couple of months old. The Shifter and Iamanja are pretty new to the team, and now that they have to get other players, that's gonna set them back even further. So I'm not expecting much from them this week, and maybe next week maybe we'll see them slightly stronger, but it'll take a long time for them to adjust with a roster change so imminent.
Yeah, and Stress, how are you feeling about them?
I felt so bad for them that game against Curse. Like there was that point where it was almost a base race, and if they maybe made a couple of different decisions, they kind of could have got something from it. But I think, as everybody's already said, they had some really close games this week. And I mean, as you said as well, it's Curse and CLG. They're pretty much going in. That's some of your two toughest opponents to have week one. So I think they did good. It'll be good to watch them, see how they go. Yeah, I think got promise. Just see, as Lord said, with the roster changes, see how that ends up taking them.
Yeah, and I guess the last team for NA that played this week anyway was Vulcan, who also went 0-2. They played TSM and Dignitas, so also a pretty tough week for them. Crumbz having played a game against them as well. How did you feel about Vulcan?
They were that game, and especially the game they had against TSM. They looked quite underwhelming, actually. The mistakes that they were making were really, really amateur mistakes, in my opinion. And that's not how they play regularly. They don't really falter that much. So I think maybe they had sort of a similar case to what happened to us. Maybe not moving in affected them a little bit, or just a lack of, maybe jet lag if they're flying from the East Coast, which I know they did. So maybe this week they'll be able to just get back on track on how they usually play, because normally Fear can put up a better fight than that.
Yeah, that's oh, sorry about that. Lot, what were you thinking about Vulcan?
Pretty much what Crumbz said. I know that they were getting like 3v1 dove on their bot tower, and they were like zoned from the tower. And Crumbz needs to mute his mic. And and Smithy came in even though they knew they were there, and they gave a free kill. And it was just like, something that you wouldn't expect a team to do. It seemed like they had a lot of nerves for the first week, which is understandable. Now that they moved into their place and they're getting situated, I'm not expecting great things from them this week, but I know after this week and going on with the rest of the season, I think they have a really solid, core of players, and I think that they'll surprise people with how well they do. If it's not this week, then in a future week. But I'm not really surprised that they lost those two games. I'm just surprised by how they lost. It just seemed uncharacteristic of them.
Yeah, I think as LCS goes on, as you said, nerves can play quite a big factor into that. It seemed maybe they were a little bit nervous, but as it goes on, as people get used to playing in that studio, I'm expecting to see a lot of the teams maybe become a little bit more composed. Because it's not easy playing when you know what's on the line and, in a TV studio, essentially. So, yeah, and well, I mean, NA did a great showing on Thursday and Friday, and I mean all of the games were at least enjoyable, even if they were kind of one-sided in some respect. But I mean that's essentially what Riot are looking for, is enjoyable games. So I really enjoyed it. Yeah, and then LCS EU, which for me I was hoping that it was going to be enjoyable, and I really enjoyed it because I know the qualifiers I got a little bit of flack because apparently EU is boring to Ambrielle at times. So
I've been giving Stress a hard time about the European qualifiers because I had to stay up all night and the games weren't that good in a lot of cases. So he's been hoping for good LCS games so I can stop making fun of him.
Did you guys manage to catch much of the European LCS, Lord?
I don't know if he heard you.
I don't know. Is my mic all right?
It's your mic's fine. It looks like
Okay.
Crumbz
There
had
were-
his mic.
The
small
I saw.
technical difficulty.
I think I saw all the games, and what is it? Evil Genius's games were so long and so boring. I
So
can't.
surprising.
Like, I fell asleep watching them. I just couldn't believe how long these games would go. Personally, if I'm playing a game and it's 11 minutes in and there's no kills, like, I'm itching inside. It's like something's wrong. Somebody needs to be killed.
Well, I mean, it is former CLG EU. Their favorite time to win is between 40 and 55 minutes. Like, if they're winning any time before that, something's going wrong in their game plan.
Yeah.
Wicked's Shen play top was pretty impressive though.
Yeah.
Said he got 2 kills bot. That says he got the 2 kills that drag. I mean, he
Oh,
played it
yeah.
well, but still, if you come back to lane with 2 kills and then drag, it's like, I'm pretty sure any champion's gonna destroy the lane.
But
Yeah,
I
but
mean, no, sorry, Lord.
I was gonna say he really pressed his advantage. I mean, I'm sure it wasn't extremely difficult to throw knives at people, but I mean, like the level of fed he got at that point was like, the game is won. Like nobody can deal with this shit in split push. You can't just force a fight 5v5 middle, engaging on Froggen's Anivia or whatever they gave him. And I think it was really interesting they gave him Anivia too.
I was a
don't
little
think
shocked at that.
I don't think that'll happen again ever. But yeah, I mean they played it really well, and Wicked got fed when he needed to get fed, and they seemed like easy games, and they just they played it really safe and boring, and they won. And I can't discredit them for playing it boring because you got to do what wins games. And I know a lot of people enjoy watching the long drawn out games, but I mean.
Really?
lost.
You know someone that's like that?
I haven't heard many people say that, but I
It's,
thought that.
no,
Go
no.
ahead.
I was just gonna make a
I
joke
was
about
just-
ward kills getting cheers. That's all I was gonna do.
Oh.
Games are really exciting when that's happening.
I was just gonna say that the only Evil Geniuses game that really surprised me was when they went up against Gambit. It was a little bit more decisive than I had thought it was going to be. I was hoping for a really good game out of that, and I know a lot of people picked Gambit going into that matchup because it seemed like they were a little more practiced. But I think, I mean, obviously EG played really well, so.
Yeah, I kind of talked to a couple of people about Gambit before, and I had a few reservations because, like, I don't think anybody ever doubts that Gambit, when they're playing their best, are pretty much best of, if not top 3 teams in the world. Because, I mean, you saw them 2-0 with Zubu, both teams, IAM, but then they kind of go quiet after a big win for a couple of weeks, and then they show up at another tournament and do really well. And I was kind of a little bit worried that would happen, and that's exactly what we saw this week. And it's a little bit discouraging that a team can be that good on one day, and then EG are a team that, it's well known that Snoopy wasn't practicing with them for about a month. I mean, if I can make a really crude comparison, they were the expectations were pretty much the same as TSM going into week 1, where people were saying they haven't practiced a lot. Maybe they're not going to be as consistent as before. And M5 kind of just let Gambit just let Evil Geniuses do what they wanted to in that game. I mean, they gave them Anivia, which to me, I mean, I know Froggen hasn't played Anivia in a long time, but there's a reason that Froggen hasn't played Anivia in a long time. They just seem to make really bad decisions in Champion Select and pretty much outpick themselves.
I agree. Their picks, I think the 2 games that they lost against Giants as well, was pretty much just because of picks. Picking Volibear jungle, like, sure, it could have worked once, but Volibear is not a good champion. And Udyr against a team that is known to play support-type junglers and Anivia, that just seems like a recipe for disaster. And it was, because they blind-picked Udyr into Lulu, Anivia, Maokai. That's a lot of kiting for a lonely bear, and like all he wanted to do that entire game was just solo drag. And after that, he was just like a walking should have gotten Magi so he could get 2 stacks and they'd be like useless for the enemy team.
Yeah, that dragon play was really interesting though. The flash over to take dragon.
Ballsy.
I've seen so
I
many
mean-
people trying to do that in solo queue now. It's not even funny, and you just get an execute. And yeah,
I respect that kind of play though, but overall I think the jungle picks were really poor. Like there's a reason that you don't see a lot of these junglers in the limelight, and that's because they're very situational. And he just kind of blind picked Volibear and Udyr into teams that can kite very hard, and that's exactly what happened.
yeah, and that game was not what people expected from it at all. But a game I think that did give exactly what people wanted going in was the SK against Fnatic game. I mean, how many times are SK and Fnatic going to play when it's like the closest game? I mean, I know probably it's not the most perfect game. I mean, both teams, I would say, made errors that led to the other team sort of coming back into it. But I mean, again, that was just another game where SK and Fnatic are just trading blows, and I feel so bad every time SK lose like this. Like, it's just, yeah, I don't know what to say.
I kind of thought it might go a little differently because obviously there's no reckless, however you know pronounce it. Obviously that's not a factor right now, and so I was a little bit surprised. But I mean, I was expecting a close game. So
Did you guys manage to
Crumbz,
catch that game?
I think Crumbz has got his mic muted again.
How many times is SK gonna be ahead of Fnatic and then lose in one fight? I think that's pretty funny, and it sucks for them, but it's quite entertaining to watch from a spectator point of view that these teams play together so many times, and every single time SK's ahead, and then it's like, all right, we lose, and the epitome of that obviously was the Xpeke play in I am. Yeah, so one of these days SK should be able to take a game off Fnatic, but I mean they'll play plenty of times in the LCS. Hopefully one of these times SK can actually get redemption.
Yeah, definitely. We might finish a game with Ocelot smiling instead of other emotions after a Fnatic game.
Yeah, I didn't think SK looked terrible though. I
No,
thought they looked pretty decent, and they were pretty impressive in the early games. Like they had big leads.
Especially against what is it? Who did they play that they beat? Nobody expected. They beat Evil Geniuses, yeah.
Yeah.
That was nice. Their new jungler is quite good actually. From at least those 3 games. Played Shen, Vi, and then I think Cho. I didn't like the Cho pick though.
I mean, a lot of the games from there were the only one that I would say that was a particular surprise was Giants beating Gambit. But after how Gambit looked in that first game, it was less of a surprise because, as I commented in, unfortunately, the show that didn't go out, Giants are a team that kind of go quiet and then just turn up and prove to everybody why they're in LCS. And did you guys catch the Giants and Gambit game?
Yeah, the AD cannon was going hammer.
Yeah, I can't believe they gave them AD Kennen. That's like that guy's favorite champion, far and away. It seems like even if you're not scared of that champion, you should just ban it out of respect, or to ban him out of his comfort zone.
Well, I know. I mean, watching Giants, they put up a really good fight against Fnatic too. I mean, they weren't looking weak in either of the games that they played. I mean, and obviously taking down Gambit is huge for them, and I think they're a lot of fun to watch. I had fun watching them in the qualifiers. That was one of the teams I didn't find boring, stress, but I always liked watching Giants play. So.
Yeah.
But yeah, I definitely think that EU is a little bit more cut and dry. It probably wasn't quite as exciting as NA, but I think that the crowd adds a different dimension to it. I know there was a Reddit thread about how people preferred the no crowd, but I think it kind of makes it a little bit more integrated with the community, in my opinion. Like to watch when people are cheering along with things. I prefer it with the crowd. I don't know. From a player's perspective, what do you guys prefer? Oh, I
Crumbz,
think
you got
Crumbz is
muted
muted
again. One day we'll get Crumbz out of the complexity
I
house. You're
think he
still
might
muted.
still be muted.
They
Still.
still can hear you, but while you
Oh,
work on that, I prefer playing. I prefer playing. I don't know. It's really hard. Like I love the crowd interactions, but at the same time, it's nice to have the peace and quiet and having nothing else to distract you. It's hard to tell. I think I've played better when I was kind of isolated from a crowd, but it's definitely more fun when there's a crowd right there. Unless you lose, and then it sucks.
Yeah, I guess I'd rather have a crowd because I look forward to winning and getting cheered on. So, but it really doesn't make an impact in the gameplay, especially now that you have the actual noise canceling headset. So it really doesn't matter because before, in a couple of other tournaments, and you didn't have sound canceling headsets, they'd have the idea of giving the crowd these little things that made a lot of noise, these air balloon things, and you just couldn't hear anything. Like, it was pretty much going into a hell in Keller.
And talking about noise, one thing that TSM brought up in their post-game interview was the fact that they were shouting a lot in game. Did that actually do anything in the game against us, Crumbz? Were you guys put off at all by TSM's noise?
Not really, because when it was same with Vulcan, like when they'd yell really, really loud. You'd be surprised how loud they get, and then they're just there by themselves. Like, wow, you're really just cheering yourself on. Okay, so it really didn't matter because when they were cheering, like we pretty much said we just died. So it's like, all right. I mean, I guess if they're cheering in the middle of a fight that is close call, maybe they could be affected. But they were just cheering at, like when a fight was over and we were all dead. So it's like, all right, I guess they'll just add to the humiliation. But it really didn't affect the gameplay itself.
Oh, fair enough. I thought that was just maybe something to clear up a little bit because TSM said on screen that it sounded like maybe we were a little demoralised from it. But I know when Zuna shouts, you can hear that through onto the mainstream.
I mean, it's not the actual yelling that's demoralizing. It's the actual fact that you're losing it because like the yelling happens afterwards. It really doesn't matter who yells. It's pretty much like playing with a crowd. That's how you see it. If you're playing with a crowd, a big crowd, and your enemy makes a play, the crowd is going to cheer for them. That's pretty much how I view it, so it really doesn't affect me much.
I mean, that's pretty much a wrap-up for European LCS as well, as you said. A lot of what was expected happened. The only thing that was different was the Gambit Gamings, but of course, again, the great thing about LCS is we get consistent games each week. So North America, again, Thursday and Friday this week. So it's the first week that we'll see Complexity play. So you guys are playing against Curse. Is that on Thursday, I believe?
Yeah, at 3 p.m. I think. Eastern or Pacific time.
How are you guys feeling going into that?
It's our only game for the week, and we've had a couple weeks to prepare for it. So we think we're gonna come out with a really solid game plan on how to beat Curse, because they've obviously been looking really strong, and they have a lot of experience and practice on us. But honestly, I don't think we're very intimidated by them. I think this is a game we can definitely win, and I think a lot of people would be surprised by that. But yeah, I'm not gonna shit talk or anything, but we're going into the game very confidently, and obviously we wish we were playing Marn, because then we feel like our chances to win would be a lot higher. But we're going into this game expecting to win and play them very closely.
And now one person that does get to play Marn this week is Crumbz. I think that's the first game of the day on Thursday. How are we feeling going against Marn?
That's right. It's like I'm pretty confident we're gonna win. I mean, if we don't, it's be like, wow, what happened? It's like, what the hell? But we're practicing quite a bit, even though we don't have the actual gaming house. You don't have a place to be and all that. We're still managed to get in the practice that we need. So I think we're going to be going into that game at least way better than we showed at the first week of the LCS. And at that level, Martin should not be a problem. And we've played Martin before. We've scrimmed them before the LCS began. And that's a long time ago, a couple of weeks. But in those scrims, it was kind of really one-sided, as in less than 20 minutes winning.
So it looks like the acceptable trash talk is versus Marn, but not acceptable to trash talk Curse this week. So I guess after that we've got TSM versus Vulcan. And how are you guys feeling about that matchup?
Really, they play again?
TSM versus Vulcan's second game this week.
Oh. Vulcan has to step it up. I'm sure they know what happened in their first week against TSM. Their mistakes had pretty much nothing to do with picks. Their picks were fine, in my opinion. A little bit sketchy, but completely manageable. The mistakes they made were simply on actual them playing poorly. So if they manage to just correct that this week, either I think TSM still has the edge, but it'll definitely be closer games.
I think it's going to be hard for Vulcan to win because they're moving into a house this week. They're getting situated. They've lost a lot of practice time this week. And I know TSM hasn't let up at all, and they're still scrimming, 8 hours a day, every day. And I think it's going to be really hard for Vulcan to come back and take a game off of them. I think it's definitely possible, but I feel like TSM should be pretty heavily favored.
Yeah, and we've
I
got
thought Vulcan had a house already. Yeah, they had a video about it.
Yeah, they just got it, so they have to
they
get
just
their computers and their desks and everything, and get groceries, and I mean that takes time. Like that doesn't have. Trust me, we just moved in over here. We've lost a lot of practice time getting all that shit set up. But after you do it, it's all worth it. But moving in the middle of an LCS week is it can't be easy.
I think your video froze a lot.
Yeah, it looks like it just frozen a sec, so hopefully we can get Lautemortis video back. But then for me, match of the week, I don't know. I don't think it's actually one of the hyped matches on the LoL esports page, but our rematch against TSM to me is probably the best game of the week for the NA side. How do you feel going into this one, Crumbz? Oh, I think he might be muted again.
Yeah, I feel a lot more confident this time around. I mean, we saw how they played. We know what to do. The last game against Vulcan kind of showed us that we can get into our stride again. And even though it wasn't complete, we should be able to just go into it because even though we still have the house, we're still practicing, and we've studied VODs and replays and all that. So I think that game we should be able to win it, and especially even more important than that is because we're blue side. Because first week we got 3 purple side games in back to back, and when we thought it was actually going to be 3 blue sides, but the actual LoL esports side had incorrect information. It had a mistake in it. So then we found out we planned out for blue side the entire week, and then when we got there, hey, surprise, you're purple. It's like, oh shit. And now we actually know that we're blue side, and statistically, it's statistically proven that blue side wins more games than purple. And you want the blue side against tougher teams most of the time, just because it'll give you that extra edge that you need. And it's sad to say, but you can't deny everything that will help you win the game, and just having blue side is one of those things.
And the preparation, obviously, is a big part of it.
Yeah.
And then if we look at quickly, on Friday you've got games with Curse and Vulcan are playing each other, Dignitas, GGU, TSM and Man, and Vulcan and GGU as well. So we're seeing more out of GGU this week, and of course Man are now playing in more games. So you guys seem to be pretty confident that Man might not do as well this week as some of the other teams. How are you guys feeling just overall about Vulcan and GGU after this first week?
If you look at all of the bottom 4 teams, it looks like it's going to be hard for any of them to win any of their matches this week, in my opinion. Because GGU is replacing 2 people. We're going up against Curse, who is undefeated to this point. Marn is still getting into the swing of things, and they qualified from the online qualifier, so there's still a lot that they need to catch up for competitive play. And then Vulcan just moved into their house, so it seems like all of 4 of the bottom teams, are kind of, and Dignitas too is still working on their housing situation. So like just issues like across the board, non-league related. I feel like it's going to be an advantage for all the, top 3 or 4 NA teams. But I don't know. I don't. Other than like Vulcan versus GGU, I feel like the favorite should win every game. I don't know. I don't see any upsets. Except, I mean, obviously we're going to be cursed, but that's not an upset.
Obviously. But who are you gonna pick in that Vulcan versus GGU game?
I don't know
That's
even.
the one
I
you
don't
think.
even. I don't even know who GGU is using mid.
The
So
winner will win and the loser will lose.
I have to go with Vulcan because I don't know who GGU is using. Like, all I know is Shifter's not playing mid. I think Zion might be playing mid, and they might use Fat for top or something. But I mean, it'd be silly to go with GGU for me, not knowing who they're using.
Okay, well, from there we've got Europe again on Saturday and Sunday. Some of probably the bigger matches to look out for is the rematch between EG and SK. That should be a really interesting game, especially what with SK taking the first of the 2 games. How do you think EG are going to bounce back this week? Do you think they're going to be able to beat SK? I mean that game was fairly close, but what do you guys think?
I think it'll be a close game. SK has shown that they've shown up so far this season to play all their games, and obviously the favorite would be EG. I mean, to come back and win this, and I think that's probably what will happen. Getting more practice in as a team, and they showed up pretty well the first week with little practice, so I'd expect them to come back stronger. But it's definitely going to be a game that you need to watch because it could go either way, definitely.
Enzo, who's blue side? If EG's blue side, then they'll probably win.
Yeah, EG's blue side.
EG is gonna win.
So that simple. The blue side wins, is it?
That's all it comes down to. I guess I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be that surprised if SK took another game, but I would expect EG to probably come back and be able to take the win for the second time around.
Yeah, definitely. But the other interesting thing this week from Europe is that the Dragonborns actually get to play their first sets of games, which I know Scara said in our first show that Dragonborns probably weren't going to do so well. But, I mean, like Man being in North America this week, we see the equivalent team playing in Europe. So, I mean, Dragonborns have had a couple of roster changes, what with Broken Shard having to take a back seat for now, I believe. I didn't quite catch up on exactly what happened in that Reddit thread, but yeah, that'll be an interesting one to watch as well. So I think overall the games this week maybe aren't quite as high profile as some of the games from week 1, but hopefully the interest will stay for both North America and Europe.
Yeah, I actually think that Giants versus Wolves will be a decent game. I think that's a pretty close matchup as far as if we're looking at closeness of games. I would expect.
I was just gonna say I wanna watch all the Giants games after they beat Gambit. I wanna watch them play as much as possible because I think they're one of the most interesting teams in Europe to watch that I actually know very very little about.
Yeah, I feel pretty similar.
How they had what is it? Elise, Wukong, Zyra, Kennen, and I can't remember the other one. But that was just a really weird comp that could have worked, but then Italy's just too OP. So just running things like that is really exciting to watch. Like even if it didn't work, just running it and having a close game from it, that's just entertainment. That's what everybody wants to see from both a spectator point of view as somebody that's not involved, and from somebody like Lautemortis and I that's actually playing in the league.
What did you guys feel about some of the comments about... Oh, there's a little bit of echo on someone's mic. I'm not sure whose that is. Sorry.
It's Crumbz a little bit.
Hey, I'm muted. Don't blame me.
I'm sorry, the Skype was telling me the blue boxes, you know.
I mean, some of the comments going into last week for Europe was that North America was still playing in Season 2. How do you guys feel about that? Those sorts of comments coming from the European players?
What is that supposed to mean? Like, everybody played the same thing.
Yeah, I was a bit... When they said that, I was a little bit surprised considering we had seen some of the new pickups like Kale, but I think it was
Europe
somebody...
doesn't. Most of Europe doesn't even play kill. Yeah, I think that comment is just completely often has no basis, especially because you see teams like Gambit and the other that haven't even was it Gambit and Giants, something like that. They didn't even ban or pick Kale, which means they haven't adapted to Season 3 because a champion like that just can't be passed by. Even if they don't play, like it's so strong that you have to learn how to play it. And then Europe, Evil Geniuses played a team comp that would be exactly the same as in Season 2, which was Shen, Maokai, and Nivea, Caitlyn, Lulu. I really don't think that comment makes absolutely any sense.
Yeah, I'm glad you picked up on that too. I thought I'd because that wasn't my comment. That was one that was made on stream. I just want to say that I firmly saw a lot of Kale, which is not Season 2 at all. But yeah, I just thought maybe I'd get a little bit of a rise out of one of you there.
Pretty successful.
But yeah, as you said, it's again some good matches this week. It'll be interesting to see how some of the teams do. But along with LCS this week, we'll be back in the next week as well with hopefully some some new guests. I mean, obviously I love speaking to you guys, but I'm sure you don't want to be on for
2 shows might be enough in a row. Yeah.
I've had enough of Crumbz. I've just seen Crumbz every day. So when I look to my left and I see him, and when I look at my Skype I see him, it's a little too much.
To see me eat.
I do appreciate the almonds though, because I'm growing big and strong like Zinzao.
Yeah, for those of you who missed it, Crumbz is staying at the Complexity House, which is why we had some of the audio issues. But hopefully Dignitas won't be homeless for that much longer. So.
It's literally like I can put things in his from my thing to his camera.
Cutie's moving in today too.
Today, really?
With Complexity.
I think he's moving in today.
I don't think so.
So are you all just going to live together in a giant 2-team house?
No, I think they...
Overpopulation is the theme of LA, so it really works.
That'll be interesting. We'll have to catch up with you, Lautemortis, on how living with Cutie is. There's a lot of speculation.
That's worth the whole show, I think. Just a whole show in and of itself.
I've heard. When Scar was like, "Can you guys take Cutie?" I was like, "Sure, no problem." He's like, "Do you know what you're signing up for?" And I was like, And we talked to Crumbz, and Crumbz was like, "You know how much hair you just let into the house?" And I was like,
have you guys got any shout-outs you want to do, starting with Lautemortis?
It is worse, and it's more hair than the girl, by the way. It is a lot more. Way more.
Yeah, I'll let you know how it is. But as far as shout-outs, you guys for having me on the show for the second time. Very flattering. Crumbz for these awesome almonds. Sound Blaster, QPad, PNY, Creative, Origin, G8, and Twitch, all for giving us awesome equipment and helping us find a place to live. As far as Complexity for letting us get this place and live with Crumbz and all this awesome stuff that we get to do and play video games for a living. That's probably a shout out for Riot there. But yeah, just awesome. Everyone's really happy. My teammates are awesome to live with, and I enjoy them a lot. So I'm just happy that I'm in such a good place in my life. And shout outs to everybody for watching.
And Crumbz, any shout outs for you?
Yes, I have shout outs to Intel, Alienware, Scan, Kingston, Creative, QPad, Killer, Twitch, Yama, and WD. They're our sponsors of Dignitas, and they always help us out with a lot of stuff, just like constantly showering us with things that help us out, which is really, really nice because a lot of it just feels like, oh, all right, I'll take it. And shout out to Riot as well for League of Legends and all that. To you guys for having us in the show, and to Complexity, of course, for letting me stay here. For, like, really big shout out for being so nice. And I'm actually enjoying myself here quite a lot. And yeah, it's a really good point in I guess everybody's lives that they're here. And shout out to my family as well, to my mom and dad. They're not watching, but I'll just say it anyways because I want to.
Katana, how about you? Any shout outs to do?
Shout outs to Team Dignitas and Alienware for letting us do this show because it's a lot of fun. And shout out to Stress for being a great co-host and to both of our guests because this was good the second time around too. So I'm excited about that. Shout out to everyone watching and to my family who may or may not watch this far into the video. I know they want to watch it, but if they're still watching at this point, I'm impressed and thank you. And just shout out to everyone watching too. You can follow me on Twitter at KatanaMordecai if you want. I don't know if you guys want to give your Twitters too.
Yeah, they should just be on screen just beneath the portraits in the VOD. So if you guys want to follow people there, they're just kind of just down there underneath all of us. So make sure you follow us all on Twitter. And again, thank you to Alienware for sponsoring Recall and letting us do the show. Big thank you. I did say this last week, but ironically we had audio issues. Big thank you to Scan for sending me my new microphone. I know we had problems in episode 1. Scan pretty much fast-tracked me a microphone, so that was really nice of them. And hopefully things went fairly smoothly on this show, guys. I've been doing the tech side. Lumpy, who usually does all of our tech, is actually at an event for creative, so he's repping our sponsors this evening. Thank you very much again for joining us, guys. Best of luck to you guys this week for LCS. I hope you guys get all the results that you want. Again, I've been Dignitas Stress. Thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel as well. You'll get all of the latest episodes as soon as they're posted. But yeah, thank you very much again for watching, guys, and we'll see you next week.
Hey, bye.
Follow Katana. She retweets everything I do, so you're basically following me.
Oh, the Skype chat's super mad at me.
Oh, really?